If I was a superhero, this would be my pose.
In front of me today is a camera from one of the most expensive camera brands on the planet, Leica. In this box is the SL2-S, and this camera is nearly $4,900 US. And that's one of their cheaper cameras, to be honest. So let's open this box and see why someone would buy something like this. I have a knife today, Jono.
That's not allowed.
I'm breaking the rules.
It's illegal.
This camera is a loaner unit, and so it's not retail packaging. So forgive the amount of bubble wrap. Okay, so we have the camera body, which I'll take a look at in a second. They also sent a charger with an extra battery. We have a Leica M to L mount adapter. We have a Leica branded camera strap, but you probably won't use it because you'll upgrade to something a little bit nicer, especially when you're spending this much money on a camera. I would never use an included strap. And the last thing we have in this box is the 24-90 f2.8 to f4 lens. This is an L-mount native lens that Leica makes. It is, woof, this is a chonky boy, holy crap. And I mean, for context, here is Canon's 24-105, which is a very similar range, an inch and a bit longer, and it's way heavier, holy crap. But again, this camera is full frame. So let's have a look at the SL2-S. From everything I've ever read, and now that I'm holding it, the SL2 body feels amazing. So this camera feels like really solid, like the grip feels better than almost any camera I've ever held, especially for stills. So let's weigh it and see how this compares to my daily driver. Okay, so it's 938 grams, and then I'll weigh my M10. This is a little unfair because it's wearing a cage, but let's say it's around 655 grams, something like that. This is significantly heavier, and it shows, but it's also a more functional camera overall. Let's take a look at the sensor. Wow. Full frame, 24 megapixel, backside illuminated sensor. Apparently this is a new sensor from Leica. I'm not 100% certain on that. Let's cover that up so that no dust gets in there. And this, man, this camera is just like, it feels like a brick, but like the best, most premium brick that I've ever held.
Supreme break.
For I/O, we have a headphone and microphone jack. We have a full-size HDMI, which I love to see. And we have a Type-C port, which is good for file transfer and charging. So you can keep this thing powered, and you'll probably want to use the charging feature because one single battery from this camera costs $275 US on B&H, which is a very tough pill to swallow when a battery for your camera is worth almost as much as a very affordable lens. The dial on the top of the camera feels really nice. It's really large, very clicky. And then there's two programmable buttons on the top and two programmable buttons just on the side of the grip here, which is also really nice. And each of these buttons you can kind of set to whatever you want. On the back of the camera, there is the rear LCD, which is actually very nice. And you have this little silicone joystick. Honestly, I have loved the navigation of these menus. Like, there's only 3 other buttons on the back. There's play, there's function, and there's menu. And when you hit menu, you get this photo and video mode settings first. Photo, video. And the settings are completely separate from each other, which is the most seamless experience between photo and video that I've ever had. And I love it. And if you press the menu button again, you get into the deeper part of the menu, which lets you get in like more like a traditional camera. But in general, you'll probably be using the quick settings, and with this joystick, it's pretty easy to navigate. So to finish off the back, you have the thumb dial here, which can be aperture or shutter speed. You have an EVF toggle, so if you press this, you can turn off the LCD, do EVF only, or you switch it back to auto, where if you go to your eyepiece here, it'll just switch for you. And that's pretty much it. It's pretty bare bones on the back of the camera, but honestly, I like the simplicity. you have dual SD card slots. So I've got two 256 gig cards in here, which unfortunately aren't fast enough for the 4K video. So you'll need pretty fast cards for the 4K video on this camera because it's up to 400 megabits per second. Internally, you can do up to 4K 30 FPS, and then externally, you can do up to 4K 60 FPS. And it has 180 and 120 FPS full HD modes as well. Let's take a look at the bottom of the camera. You have a little port for what I assume is a battery grip. You got a tripod mount, and then it took me a second the first time I took this out of the box, but after I figured it out, it was very interesting. For the battery release on this camera, you press this little knob here, and then the battery pops out. But then it doesn't come out. And I was like, oh, is the camera broken? It's actually really smart. So you press this, and then you click once, and then the battery comes out. There's no battery door on this camera. It's just a hole for where the battery would go. It's almost like loading like a mag or something, and it's so satisfying. Like, Andy, can you hear that?
Yeah.
That click, I don't know. Okay, enough about the battery door. Even though it's really cool, I could not get over the sound. Let's get to the lens. Let's put this gigantic lens on this camera and see how it feels. Line that up. Ah, that's a good click, very satisfying. Wow, this is really heavy now. Holy crap. Here's my M10 for reference. So why don't we give this thing a test drive and see how good it is. Okay, we have Madison here. We're gonna do a quick test on this lens, the 24-90, and then I'm gonna switch to the 50mm Noctilux and see how these photos turn out.
If I was a superhero, this would be my pose.
With the joystick, the autofocus point is so easy to, like, almost even easier and faster than my Fuji to adjust. Do you hear that shutter sound?
Really good.
That shutter sounds so nice.
Now you're just gonna have 8 pictures of a wall.
Yep. That's enough photos of this lens, and now I'm gonna switch them. Don't bother including this part in the video editor because this is boring.
No, it isn't. It's super exciting.
Let's try this out, and it's all manual focus. I can't even tell if it's so bright out, and this is at like f1. This lens is ridiculous on this camera.
Why are you using it on the camera then?
Because it's amazing. I've never used anything harder to focus. So as someone who doesn't really know that much about cameras, how much do you think this camera costs with this lens?
Like, I want to say over 10 grand. It's like smoother. It just sort of looks more sleek.
Yeah, you're right on the money. It's about just over 10 grand for the whole setup.
Oh, okay. Well, yep.
Let's see how these photos turned out.
The autofocus on this lens and the sharpness performed pretty good, but you guys can be the judge. Here's the photos, and we'll have these available for download if you want to take a closer look at them. We're also going to throw up a couple photos I took on the weekend here, so you have a better sense of like the different kinds of colors you get straight out of camera on this. After using this camera shooting a portrait of somebody, it was really fun and I really enjoyed it. The autofocus was as responsive as I needed it to be, and while the camera is really heavy, it feels really good in the hand. Just like a lot of people who shoot video like heavy cameras for balance, I would describe this in a similar fashion. Okay, let's talk about why somebody would buy this camera and why somebody might buy a Leica in general. Because this camera setup, the body is $4,900 and this lens is $5,500. But $10,000 is a ridiculous amount of money for a camera and lens setup, even for the most expensive stuff. So why would you buy a Leica? I can boil it down to 3 main reasons I think people like Leica cameras. The first one being is the Leica look. Whether you agree with it or not, Leica has a specific look to the images. I've been able to see images on Instagram and be like, yep, that was shot on a Leica, and I was usually right, because there's a feeling to them that you can't really describe in words very easily. Yes, every camera has its own color science and you can edit photos to look like basically anything at this point, but the colors that come out of this straight out of camera with minimal editing, it's a different experience. And that's the second part of this. The camera itself, trust me guys, for years, and I've used a lot of cameras, I thought while Leicas seemed cool and they were obviously very expensive, they seemed unnecessary, overpriced, and something that no one should really give that much attention to. But from top to bottom, the way the camera feels, the way it operates, the images coming off the sensor, how they are to edit, everything that Leica does is about the experience. Leica knows that they will never be the most cutting edge, the most top end in terms of their specs, but they're not trying to be. Leica focuses mostly on delivering an experience that you want to use, want to be part of. You want to pick up this camera and use it. I don't want to put it down. I just want to keep shooting. And that's the best way I can explain it, because it really is the feeling of using the camera that is what they deliver. And that might not matter to you. You might not care about the experience of using a camera. This is one of the easiest cameras I've ever used, and so are all of these. You pay a lot for that experience. The third and final reason, some people might see this as a good thing, some people might see it as, well, unnecessary, is these cameras hold their value pretty well. For example, this Leica M10 that came out almost 4 years ago was just over $10,000 new. And even today, it's still worth about $6,000 Canadian. That's a lot better than most cameras last in terms of value over a 4-year period. So if you are already on board for Leica's experience for their cameras, and you want a camera that is the best they've made for video and photo at the same time, then this is probably the camera for you. If you want something that's the most cutting edge, has the best autofocus, has the most utility on gimbals and all these other video accessories, this camera probably isn't for you. So thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, you can give it a thumbs down, and leave a comment on any other camera you want me to check out. I mean, I haven't checked out Hasselblad's yet, so maybe that's coming out. We also have a video coming out on the Sony FX3 very soon. And we also recently did a video on the Zeiss ZX1, if you're interested in that. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.